Don't drink that. Ethan Cole's voice cut through the applause so sharply that Claire Hawthorne stopped with the crystal glass less than an inch from her lips. Excuse me, she said. Put it down, ma'am. Please. 300 employees stood beneath the 40-foot glass ceiling of Hawthorne Biotech's main atrium, gathered around white tables for the announcement of the largest corporate deal in the company's history. A moment earlier, the room had been alive with conversation, camera shutters, and the soft clink of ice against glass. Now there was only the faint hum of the air conditioning and Ethan's work boots crossing polished marble. He wore a navy maintenance shirt with his name stitched above the pocket, faded work pants, and the expression of a man who understood exactly how badly this moment could end for him. Claire lowered the glass slightly. At 36, she had built a reputation for remaining calm when everyone around her lost theirs. Who are you? Ethan looked at the drink, not at the executives turning toward him. Someone asking you not to take another sip. Richard Voss, the company's CFO, stepped between them. Security. 2 guards moved immediately. Ethan raised one hand. I'm not here to cause trouble. Then walk away, Richard said. Ethan Cole, facilities maintenance. One manager muttered nearby. Another whispered, has he lost his mind? Ethan heard both. He answered neither. That was something life had taught him long ago. Dignity did not require a response to every insult. Claire studied him. Her expression had hardened, but beneath the irritation was something else. Curiosity. Mr. Cole, she said, you have 5 seconds to explain why you're interrupting a company event. Ethan glanced at the glass again. Tiny bubbles climbed through the clear liquid. Ice shifted with a delicate click. Around them, phones were beginning to rise. I can't explain it in 5 seconds. Richard gave a humorless laugh. Then we're done. Maybe, Ethan said quietly. But she shouldn't drink that. One guard reached his side. Ethan could have stepped back. He could have remembered the mortgage payment due Friday, Sophie's school expenses, the health insurance attached to the badge clipped at his waist. He could have remembered that men in maintenance uniforms were expected to fix what they were assigned and stay invisible everywhere else. Instead, he looked at Claire and saw her raise the glass again, more from defiance than thirst. Ma'am. Something in his voice changed. Not louder. Quieter. Certain. Claire froze. Ethan reached toward the table, took an untouched glass from the neighboring place setting, and carefully moved it in front of her. Then he took hers and set it several feet away. No shouting. No struggle. Just 6 inches of crystal moving across white linen, followed by the kind of silence money could not command. Richard stared at him. You just touched the CEO's drink in front of 300 witnesses. Ethan nodded once. I know. The guards took position beside him. Claire's eyes remained fixed on his face. Why? She asked. Ethan looked at the glass he had moved away from her. Keep that one, he said. Don't let anybody throw it out. And for the first time that morning, Claire Hawthorne stopped looking at him like an employee who had crossed a line. She looked at him like a man who might know something no one else in the room did. 36 hours earlier, Ethan Cole stood barefoot in a small kitchen while dawn pressed pale blue light against the windows of his rented house outside Columbus, Ohio. The coffee maker sputtered behind him, the refrigerator hummed, and a skillet warmed on the stove while 9-year-old Sophie sat at the table carefully spreading strawberry jam across a piece of toast. Dad, you are staring at the toaster again. Ethan blinked. I am making breakfast. You have been making breakfast for 12 minutes. Great things take time. Sophie smiled. It is toast. Ethan finally smiled too. Mornings with Sophie were the quiet center of his life, the place where overdue bills, long shifts, and everything he had lost could wait outside for 20 minutes. Her backpack rested beside the table with a science book sticking halfway out. Next to Ethan's coffee sat an envelope from the mortgage company and a school notice about an upcoming field trip. He turned both. Face down. Sophie noticed anyway. She noticed almost everything. Are we okay? She asked. Ethan placed scrambled eggs on her plate. We are okay. That means money is tight. That means eat your eggs. She gave him the suspicious look children reserve for parents who thought they were fooling anyone. Ethan sat across from her. On the wall behind Sophie was a framed photograph of 3 people at a county fair, taken 4 years earlier. Ethan looked younger. Sophie looked tiny. And beside them stood Rachel Cole, laughing into the summer sunlight. Ethan rarely allowed his eyes to remain there for long. Grief had become quieter with time, but quiet did not mean gone. How do you always know when something is wrong? Sophie asked suddenly. Ethan looked back at her. What do you mean? Yesterday. The washing machine. You knew it was going to stop before it stopped. It made a different sound. I did not hear anything. Ethan lifted his coffee. Small things warn you first. Sophie considered that with the seriousness of a scientist reviewing evidence. So you notice small things? I try to. At 6:45, Ethan pulled on his navy Hawthorne Biotech maintenance shirt, clipped his employee badge to his belt, and packed a turkey sandwich into a brown lunch bag. Sophie stood by the door wearing her yellow coat. Before leaving, Ethan opened the narrow drawer beneath the kitchen counter to find his keys. Under a stack of receipts lay an old photograph he had not meant to uncover. Ethan in army fatigues. 3 other medics beside him. Younger faces. Different lives. Sophie appeared over his shoulder. You never talk about that. Ethan quietly closed the drawer. Bus is coming. 10 minutes later, after watching Sophie climb aboard, he drove 12 miles toward the city as the morning sky turned gold above the interstate. Hawthorne Biotech appeared beyond the downtown buildings, 42 stories of steel and blue glass catching the sunrise. Ethan entered through the service garage at 7:23, carrying his toolbox in one hand and lunch in the other. Executives crossed the marble lobby without noticing him. Assistants hurried toward elevators. Security. Officers checked badges. Ethan preferred it that way. Then, near the executive elevators, he heard a faint mechanical click that did not belong. He stopped. Everyone else kept walking. Ethan looked toward the sound and remembered what he had told Sophie less than an hour earlier. Small things warn you first. The sound came again, a soft metallic click from the executive elevator doors, followed by a brief hesitation before they opened. Ethan watched for 2 seconds, then wrote the time in the maintenance application on his phone. 7:24 in the morning. Door sensor delay, elevator 4. Nothing dramatic. Nothing anyone else would remember. That was Ethan's job, noticing what people with more important titles walked past. By 8:15, 42 floors above him, Claire Hawthorne was already leading a meeting that could determine the future of the company her father had founded. Morning sunlight stretched across the conference table, touching polished walnut, silver coffee pots, and folders marked confidential. Claire stood near the windows in a charcoal business suit, listening while Richard Voss presented financial projections on the screen. If the agreement closes Thursday, Richard said, we enter the next quarter stronger than we have ever been. Claire folded her arms. Stronger is not the same as safer. Richard smiled. You always find a cloud. That is why you still have an umbrella. A few executives laughed carefully. Claire did not. At 36, she had learned that powerful rooms rewarded confidence and punished hesitation, especially when the person at the head of the table was younger than half the people questioning her decisions. She had inherited her last name, but not their respect. That part she had earned one difficult year at a time. No announcement until legal clears every page, she said. Understood. Richard closed his folder. Perfectly. 2 hours later, Ethan stepped into elevator 4 with a diagnostic meter and toolbox. The doors began closing, then reopened. Hold it, please. A woman hurried toward him carrying a leather portfolio, a phone, and more papers than 2 hands could reasonably manage. Ethan pressed the open button. Claire entered without looking up. Thank you. Sure. The elevator rose. At the 17th floor, her phone vibrated. She shifted the portfolio, and several documents slipped free, scattering across the floor. Of course, Claire murmured. Ethan crouched immediately and gathered them before the doors could open again. You do not have to do that. They are already on the floor. He handed them back without reading them. Claire studied his maintenance shirt, then his badge. Ethan Cole. Yes, ma'am. Do you know who I am? Ethan glanced at the executive access card clipped beside her phone. Claire Hawthorne. And that does not make you nervous? The elevator hummed upward. Ethan adjusted the toolbox in his hand. Does it change whether I should help? For a moment, Claire said nothing. Then the corner of her mouth lifted. Most people in this building behave differently when they recognize me. That sounds exhausting. Claire actually laughed, once quietly. The doors opened on 42. She stepped out, then turned. Thank you, Mr. Cole. Have a good morning, ma'am. The doors closed between them. Claire remained there for a second longer than necessary, looking at her reflection in the brushed steel. Downstairs, Ethan returned to his work orders, and thought little more about the encounter. But shortly before lunch, while checking the executive lounge ventilation panel, he noticed Richard Voss speaking quietly with a catering supervisor near a locked service cabinet. Richard stopped talking when Ethan approached. "Problem?" Ethan asked. "None that concerns maintenance," Richard replied. Ethan nodded and kept walking. He did not challenge him. He did not stare. He simply noticed the supervisor's nervous hands, the cabinet door that had been left slightly open, and the sudden sharp scent in the air that did not belong among coffee, lemon polish, and fresh flowers. 3 small things. Ethan said nothing, but he remembered everyone. By noon the next day, Ethan had convinced himself that the 3 details meant nothing. A nervous catering supervisor was not unusual before a major corporate event. An unlocked cabinet could be carelessness. A strange scent could come from cleaning supplies, flowers, or any of the chemicals used throughout a biotechnology building. Still, something bothered him. Not fear. Pattern. He had spent years learning that 1 unusual detail could be coincidence, 2 deserved attention, and 3 deserved respect. Cole. Ethan turned. Marcus Bell, the building's security manager, stood near the service corridor holding a tablet. "You filed a concern about the executive lounge?" "I filed an observation." "About a cabinet?" "About 3 things." Marcus sighed. "Go ahead." Ethan kept his voice low. "Yesterday, I saw Mr. Voss talking with the catering supervisor beside a service cabinet. They stopped when I approached. The cabinet was open, and there was an odor I did not recognize." Marcus stared at him. "That is it. That is what I saw." "Did you see anyone tamper with anything?" "No." "Did you see anything removed?" "No." "Did anyone threaten Miss Hawthorne?" "Not that I heard." Marcus lowered the tablet. "Then what exactly do you want me to investigate?" Ethan paused. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Somewhere behind the wall, an ice machine dropped a fresh tray with a hollow crash. "I want you to check the service camera." Marcus shook his head. "We have 300 guests arriving tomorrow. I cannot open an internal investigation because maintenance smelled something strange." Ethan absorbed the dismissal without changing expression. "Just check the camera. Go back downstairs, Cole." Ethan held his gaze for 1 quiet second. "All right." He walked away. He did not argue because dignity was not winning every conversation. Sometimes it was knowing which conversation was not finished. That afternoon, Ethan received a work order for a faulty temperature sensor beside the executive hospitality room. He arrived at 4:10 with his toolbox and found the catering staff preparing for the next morning. White linens covered rolling tables. Cases of sparkling water stood beside silver trays. Fresh flowers filled the room with the scent of lilies. Ethan replaced the sensor, tested it twice, then noticed something near the beverage station. 1 case of water carried a different inventory sticker from the others. Small thing number 1. He looked toward the counter. Most bottles had been arranged in neat rows, but 6 had been separated onto a tray marked executive table. Small thing number 2. Then the catering supervisor entered, saw Ethan standing there, and stopped. "You finished?" "Just about." "Then I need the room cleared." Her voice was polite, but her fingers tightened around the clipboard in her hands. Small thing number 3. Ethan closed his toolbox. "Those bottles for tomorrow?" "Yes." "Same supplier as the others?" Her eyes flicked toward the tray. "You are maintenance." "I know." "Then maintain something." Ethan nodded slowly. "Have a good evening." He left through the service door, but instead of taking the elevator downstairs, he stopped beside the security desk on 41. "Marcus." The security manager looked up and immediately frowned. "Not again. Check the delivery record for the executive beverages." "Ethan, please." Marcus leaned back. "You have no evidence. That is why I am asking you to check. And I am telling you to let it go." Ethan stood quietly, feeling an old memory press against the edge of his thoughts, a place he rarely allowed himself to visit. A different room. A different warning. A moment when everyone had waited for certainty, because certainty felt safer than instinct. He pushed the memory away. "Fine," he said. Marcus returned to his screen. Ethan walked toward the elevator. Before the doors closed, Marcus called after him. "You noticed too much, Cole." Ethan looked back. Sometimes people notice too little. The doors shut. The next morning, hundreds of employees filled the atrium beneath the rising sun. At the center of the executive table, 6 glasses waited beside 6 bottles of sparkling water. Ethan stood nearly 40 feet away, checking a lighting panel, when he saw the catering supervisor approach Claire Hawthorne's place setting. She poured one glass, set the bottle down, and quickly walked away. Ethan stopped working. Across the room, Richard Voss looked at the glass, then at Claire. And for the first time, all three small things pointed in the same direction.